In Lesson 3-4, we are going to learn a formula for figuring out equivalent names for fractions. You're going to start out by needing your whiteboard marker, and eraser for a warm-up before we begin in our math journal. So on your whiteboard, would you please number 1 and number 2? And you may use your multiplication chart if you are still working on memorizing those facts. What you're going to do is in number 1, I want you to find multiples of 2 starting with 16. Then I want you to write the next 5 multiples of 2 starting with 16. Then for number 2, you're going to find multiples of 5 starting with 45. Would you please find the next 5 multiples after that? Go ahead and pause your whiteboard while you are filling in the multiples of 2 and 5. So for 16, you would put 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, and 26. Notice that they are all even numbers. Anytime you have a number that ends in even number, you know that 2 will be a factor. Number 2, find multiples of 5 starting with 45. 45, 50, 55, 60, 65, and 70. Notice that multiples of 5 always end in 0 or 5. Go ahead and erase your whiteboard. This time, we're going to again number 1 to 2, but we're going to find multiples of 12 starting with 24. And let's go with the next 4. Then multiples of 9 starting with 27. And then find the next 4. Again, you are welcome to use your multiplication chart. Remember, the one in the back of your math journal only goes till 10. So I've sent home 2 of them so far that go through 12s. Go ahead and pause your video and write in the next 4 multiples of each. So we have 24, 48, 60, 72, and 84. For the multiples of 9, starting with 27, which would be 9 times 3. 9 times 4 is 36. 9 times 5 is 45. 9 times 6 is 54. 9 times 7 is 63. Go ahead and wipe off your whiteboard. We're going to move into our journal next. You're going to go to page 77 in your math journal, and it says equivalent names for fractions. You're going to do some coloring in of circles and writing some missing numerators, which is the top number of a fraction. If you want to go ahead and pause the video and get markers to make it a little bit quicker, you are welcome to. Go ahead and pause the video if needed. On journal page 77, we are going to write equivalent names for fractions. Go ahead and open up your math journal and find page 77. The directions say to color the circles and write the missing numerators. The numerator is the top number. So number 1 says color half of each circle. So the first one has been done for you. Now what they've done is they've taken the circle and put it into more sections, all of them being equal. You are going to go ahead and color in half of it again. And if you look, it is now the bottom number tells me how many equal pieces that circle has been divided into. And we have colored in 3/6. So in other words, 3/6 is the same as 1/2. Let's do the same thing to the third example. We're going to again shade in half of it. The bottom number tells me how many equal sections it has been divided into, and 6 out of those 12 are shaded. So 1/2 is the same as 3/6, which is the same as 6/12. Number 2 says color 1/3 of each circle. So I'm going to color in 1 out of the 3 equal parts. My denominator tells me how many equal parts that circle has been divided into, and the top number tells me how many have been shaded. I will do the same thing. For the second example, the same amount of the circle is being shaded in. The bottom number tells me there are 6 equal parts, and I shaded 2 out of 6. I'll do the same thing for the third example. Same amount is being shaded. This time the circle is in 12 equal sections. This time I have 4 out of 12, or 4/12 shaded. Make sure you're shading in your math journal at the same time. Pause at any time if needed. Now, number 3 says color 2 out of 3, or 2/3 of each circle. 1 out of 3, 2 out of 3. 2/3, or 2 out of 3 is colored. I'm going to do the same thing. I'll shade in this section and this section so that the same amount is shaded in the second circle. This time the circle was divided into 6 equal sections, and I colored in 4. The last one, I'm going to again do the same thing. I'm going to shade in the same amount. This time the circle was divided into 12 equal parts, and I shaded in 8/12. These fractions are all equal to one another. Now, continuing to look at journal page 77, again, remember to follow along and do this in your math journal with me as you were watching the video. So in the top part, we shaded on that page. Now we're going to move on to page 78. So you'll have to turn the page. It says name collection boxes for equivalent fractions. In each name collection box, write the missing number in each fraction so that the fraction belongs in the box. Fill in the empty boxes with fractions that belong. So all of these fractions will be equal to 1/2. So I'm just taking this number up here. Now what they've done in the first example is to give it fours. What they're going to do is say, what did you multiply 2 by to give you 4? So 2 times what will give you 4? Well, 2. Whatever you multiply the bottom by, you're going to multiply the top by. So if I multiply the bottom by 2, I'm going to multiply the top by 2. That gives me an equivalent fraction. Let's try another one like that. We're still working with 1/2, so let me rewrite that. This time, I'm looking at the second example. And it tells me that my numerator or top number is 5. So what did I multiply 1 by to give me 5? In other words, what times 1 gives me 5? Well, the answer would be 5. So if I multiply by 5 on the top, I have to do the same thing to the bottom. 2 times 5 equals 10. In other words, 5/10 is the same as 1/2. Let's try another one. This time, I'm looking at example number 3, and it tells me that my denominator is 6. So 2 times what equals 6? Well, 3. So if I multiply the bottom by 3, I have to multiply the top by 3. 1 times 3 is 3. In other words, 3/6 is also equal to 1/2. The next one has a numerator of 4, and I'm looking at this one right here. 1 times what equals 4? Well, 4. If I multiply the top by 4, I must have to multiply the bottom by 4 to get an equivalent fraction. And 2 times 4 is 8. So 4/8 is the same thing as 1/2. Now you can do that same process for any fraction. So here you're going to fill in your own fraction that's equal to 1/2. So they've already multiplied by 2 and by 5 and by 3 and by 4. Maybe try 8. So if I multiply the top by 8, I have to multiply the bottom by 8. 1 times 8 is 8, and 2 times 8 is 16. Why don't you try coming up with your own equivalent fraction that equals 1/2? The second set of boxes on page 78 ask you to find equivalent fractions for 1/4. So the first one that we're looking at is here, has a denominator of 8. So I say to myself, what did they multiply 4 by to give me 8? And the answer would be 2. If I multiplied the bottom by 2, I have to multiply the top by 2. And 1 times 2 is 2. So in other words, 2/8 would be the same as 1/4. Let's try another one. This time, it's saying that we have 3 as our numerator. So what would I multiply 1 by to give me 3? Well, the answer would be 3. If I multiply the top by 3, I have to multiply the bottom by 3. And this is why you would need to know those multiplication facts throughout 4th grade. 4 times 3 is 12. In other words, 3/12 is the same as 1/4. Let's try another one together. This time, they give us a denominator of 100. Now think of money for a minute. Think of quarters. I need 4 of them to make $1. In other words, 4 times what would give me 100? The answer would be 25. So if they multiplied 4 times 25 to get 100, they multiplied 25 on the denominator. We have to multiply 25 on the numerator. And 1 times 25 is 25 100ths. That is the same or equivalent to 1/4. Now, I want you to take a number that hasn't been multiplied. So here they multiplied by 2, here they multiplied by 3, here they multiplied by 25. I want you to come up with 2 of your own in these bottom 2. What are you going to multiply the top and the bottom by? Would you go ahead and choose a number other than 2, 3, or 25 and fill in the bottom 2? Go ahead and pause your video. Well, I'm going to say let's take it times 4. 1 times 4 would be 4. 4 times 4 would be 16. 4/16 works. I could also take it times 5. 1 times 5 is 5. 4 times 5 is 20. 5/20 would be equivalent as well. What I'd like you to do for number 3 is to go ahead and write in the missing number for each fraction. We're going to make them equal to 2/3. All I want you to do are these first 2. Go ahead and complete them and fill in your boxes on page 78. If you want to do the last 3, you are welcome to, but please make sure you do just at least the first 2.